رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد جماعة المسلمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا بني آدم لا يفتننكم الشيطان كما أخرج أبويكم من الجنة ينزع عنهما لباسهما ليريهما سوآتهما إنه يراكم هو وقبيله من حيث لا ترونهم إنا جعلنا الشياطين أولياء للذين لا يؤمنون صدق الله العظيم. Surah Al-A'raf verse number 27. Surah Al-A'raf verse number 27. Ik kan amper voel die lus. Had je Ofi? This was Booba aunt. Inshallah, I won't keep you long. I know the Booba is on the stove waiting for you, inshallah. Ian karamong, twee karamong, three karamong, inshallah. But for now, something very serious. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in Surah Al-A'raf, verse number 27. Allahu Akbar. Ya Bani Adam, O mankind. Speaking to all of us. لا يفتننكم الشيطان. Do not be tempted by the shaitan. You know the word fitna, we've spoken about it before. It means to test. It means to try. But it also means to tempt. That's what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, ما تركت فتنة من بعد أشد على الرجال من النساء. I haven't left a temptation greater on men after me than the temptation of women. So it means to test. Just like the Arabs say, فَتَنْتُ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ بِالنَّارِ. I tested the gold and the silver with the fire to see if it was genuine gold or genuine silver. What did the poet say? سَبَقْنَاهُ نَحْسَبُهُ لُجَيْنَ فَأَبْدَى الْكِيرُ عَنْ خَبَثِ الْحَدِيدِ. We tested it thinking it was a piece of silver, and the fire exposed the impurities of the metal. So it is a trial, but at the same time, it's a temptation. Shaitan is tempting us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not let the shaitan tempt you. كَمَا أَخْرَجَ أَبَوَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ. Just like he caused, through that deception, through that temptation, he caused for your parents to be taken out of the garden. Kama akhraja. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes the removal of them from the garden that they were in. He attributes it to shaitan. That's why in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَأَزَلَّهُمَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا. Shaitan caused them to slip from it. So he's the cause. He tempted them, he deceived them. يَنْزِعُ عَنْهُمَا لِبَاسَهُمَا. Removing from them their clothing. لِيُرِيَهُمَا سَوْآتِهِمَا. That he might expose to them their awrah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ. Indeed, he sees you. هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ. Him and his group, his followers. مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. From where you cannot see them. Indeed, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا الشَّيَاطِينَ أَوْلِيَاءَ لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Indeed, we have made the shayateen as allies for those who don't believe. Now, there's a lot of symbolism here. Yes, we believe that it happened as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us. That our father was created in the garden, and then from our father, our mother was created. And that garden, if we now just for a moment ponder over the hikmah, over the wisdom of the clothing that they were wearing, and why shaitan wanted to remove that clothing from them, and the garden itself. If we look at the verse in Surah Taha, tafsir, whenever we make tafsir of the Quran, the first tafsir that we look for is tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. To make tafsir of the Quran, ما أجمل في موضع فقد فسر في موضع آخر. That which has been made comprehensive in one part of the Quran has been explained in more detail in another part. So let's do tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. Let's go to Surah Taha, verse 117. So we got A'raf 27, and we've got Taha 117. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ إِنَّ هَذَا عَدُوٌّ لَكَ وَلِزَوْجِكَ. And we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, And we said, O Adam, indeed this, inna hadha aduwwun lak. Indeed this shaitan, Iblis, is an enemy for you. Wali zawjik, and for your wife. فَلَا يُخْرِجَنَّكُمَا مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ فَتَشْقَى. So don't allow him to take you out, the two of you. Don't allow him to take the two of you out of the garden. فَتَشْقَى. And then you will have to toil. Then you will have to toil. مَا قَالَ فَتَشْقَيَا. He didn't say so, and then both of you will toil. You, Adam, you will toil. Because at the moment, they're in the Jannah. And this Jannah, it's a walled garden. It's shaded. They have everything that they have to eat or need to eat and drink. Everything that they need to eat or drink is in that garden. They have clothing on their bodies and they have shading all around them, from above and on all four sides. The proof in that is, if we look at the next two verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse number 118, Surah Taha 118, إِنَّكَ لَكَ أَلَّا تَجُوعَ فِيهَا وَلَا تَعْرَى. So this shaitan is an enemy for you. This is now before they were taken out of the garden. Allah is warning them. Shaitan is your enemy. Don't let him take you out of the garden, because then you, O Adam, you will toil. And I'll get back to that. Why Adam will toil alone. Because الرجال قوامون على النساء. Men are the maintainers of women. They're in the garden, they can just pick anything, drink from anywhere. If they get kicked out of the garden and they're in the desert, in the wild, they'll have to find a place to hide from the wild beasts. And Adam will have to go out every day to hunt for their food. And he'll have to go to find a river or some water source somewhere to get water for their drink. He will toil, in other words. So whilst they're in the garden, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, indeed, إِنَّ لَكَ أَلَّا تَجُوعَ فِيهَا. In this garden you'll never go hungry. وَلَا تَعْرَى. And you will never be unclothed. You'll never go hungry and you'll never be unclothed. Verse 119. وَإِنَّكَ لَا تَظْمَأُ فِيهَا وَلَا تَضْحَى. وَلَا تَضْحَى. And in this garden, you'll never get thirsty and you will never be exposed to the heat of the sun. I mean, what else do you want? فَوَسْوَسَ إِلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And so shaitan whispered to him. Now, let's go back to the symbolism. The clothing, which is the main thing that Allah wants to remove from us, is the clothing of the heart. Taqwallah. We did this verse right at the beginning of the month. يا بني آدم قد أنزلنا إليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى. The clothing of taqwa. This is the clothing that we wear on our hearts. Shaitan wants us to lower this shield. The shield that we place between ourselves and everything that would bring upon us the displeasure of Allah, that thing that we're developing and renovating and restoring in this month of Ramadan. He wants us to lower that shield of Allah consciousness. And not to be conscious of Allah in everything we do, in everything we say, everywhere we go, each and every single day. Because if we do that, if we become unconscious of Allah, like the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Ash-shaytanu jathimun ala qalbi bin Adam." Shaitan is perched on the heart of man. فَإِذَا ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَنَسَ وَإِذَا غَفَلَ وَسْوَسَ. So if man remembers Allah, then ash-shaytan al-khannas, he withdraws. But if man becomes heedless and unconscious of Allah, doesn't mind or care how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees him, or knows of what is in his heart or what he's saying on his tongue, waswasa, then the shaitan gets his gap and he whispers. So, as soon as we drop that shield of taqwa Allah, then we are going to exit from the protective garden of the Sharia. So the clothing is like the shield of taqwa, and the garden is like the Sharia. As long as we have that shield of taqwa on our hearts, then we will be safe in the garden of Sharia. But as soon as we remove that shield of Allah consciousness from our hearts, and we allow the temptation of shaitan to enter our hearts, then we will leave the protected garden of the Sharia. And then we'll be exposed to the elements. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned our father, you'll have no food, you'll have no drink, you'll have no shade, you'll have no clothing. You'll be like an animal in the wild. Well, obviously, not an animal in the true sense of the word, but in terms of being exposed. And that's why the poet says, إِذَا الْمَرْءُ لَمْ يَلْبَسْ ثِيَابٍ مِنَ التُّقَى تقلب عريانا ولو كان كاسيا وخير لباس المرء طاعة ربه ولا خير في من كان لله عاصيا. If a person doesn't wear the shield of taqwa on their hearts, then it is like they are walking around naked, even if they have clothes on. And the best clothing that a person can wear is the obedience of their Lord, and there's no good in the one that is consistently disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Jamaatul Muslimin, let us understand why we are fasting this month of Ramadan, so that we can restore that shield of taqwa, that we can stay safely in that garden of the Sharia, that protective garden. That's why fisq, which means transgression. The Arabs, they say the meaning of fisq, إِذَا فَسَقَتْ رُتْبَةُ عَنْ قِشْرِهَا. If the vegetable or the fruit, if it comes out of its protective covering. You know, fruit, it's got a skin. Vegetables have got a skin. As soon as you peel that skin off, what happens to the fruit and the vegetable? It rots. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this garden of the Sharia. Because as soon as we lower that shield of taqwa, our souls are going to be exposed to the elements of our enemies, the nafs, the shaitan, the dunya, and the whims and the fancies, and then our souls are going to be corrupted. So this is the importance. Let's renew our intention, inshallah. It is now the 16th night. I was a bit confused. I asked somebody today, is it gisteraan, Boeba auntie? Hy sê nee, jy moet eers paas aan die 15de dag. Dan is jy op die berg. Then you can drink your Boeba. So, hani'an lakum, you have reached, mashallah, tabarakallah, the 15th day. Once it's not op die berg, go and enjoy your Boeba at home after Witr Salah, of course. And inshallah ta'ala, we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in the remaining days and nights, that we continue to build up this shield of taqwa on our hearts, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with that taqwa, with that consciousness, Allah forever keeps us in the protected garden of the Sharia, that inshallah ta'ala we might end in the akhirah, we might enter the eternal bliss of the gardens of Jannah. Ameen. يا رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وآخر الدعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Just so, like I greeted you last weekend, I'm just going for one day tomorrow, inshallah. But I will see you on Sunday night, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Remember me in your du'as. Nuhibbukum fillah. We love you all for the sake of Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh yes, the Qiyamul Layl program. Qiyamul Layl program from the 21st night, all the odd nights. I will just quickly give to you the Qurra, alhamdulillah, that we are honored to have. 21st night will be Qara Isa Leek. 23rd will be Qari Mubin Parker. 25th, Ustad Qari Ismail Lont. 27th night will be Qari Mujahid Defris. 29th night, Maulana Masroor Islands. And that will be from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, just for 1 hour. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.